Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to live Strumstick lessons. I can see from the chat list that there's numerous people that have come back from last week, so thank you for returning. And we're going to carry on with the kind of things that we were doing last week. And for anyone who's new to the live stream, thank you for coming. And I can see that there's people from all over the country. And I think this is amazing that we get together like this in our sort of pseudo together way. But I'm a firm believer that experiencing connection with people is much more a function of the interaction that you have with them than how physically close you are located with them. So this is exciting for me, for you to interact with me, and for me to get to interact with you. And I think we're all, in a small way, taking care of each other by doing this. So once again, welcome. And this Thursday today marks the what would have been the opening day of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, Jazz Fest in New Orleans. And of course, that's not happening. But WWOZ New Orleans Radio has an amazing program of streaming live radio broadcast of many past performances from Jazz Fest. So if you are someone that goes to Jazz Fest or wish you had, check out WWOZ because they'll be streaming, Thursday through Sunday this week and Thursday through Sunday next week in the hours that the Jazz Fest would have been happening, basically Central Time, 11 to 7. And there's a lot of great music. My partner Sandy and I were dancing to a little Ella Fitzgerald from 1977, so that was pretty cool earlier. So in honor of Jazz Fest, which I've been fortunate enough to attend as an instrument maker in the contemporary crafts area for many years, I thought the first song we'd start working on today would be When the Saints Go Marching In. And I will say this, that as I choose songs for us to work on, the song that I pick, or the two songs that we might do on any given lesson, they may be your favorite songs, they may not be your favorite songs, but I'm picking songs that I think are good vehicles for showing techniques on the strumstick that you can add and develop and put into many songs that you might play. So if you think of them as vehicles, and we'll mostly just do first verse and chorus, things like that, but we'll go over them numerous times, adding layer and layer of things to ornament them and make them more interesting to play and give variety, as you could go through a song with multiple verses with a little different flavor in each of the verses and things like that. So with that said, I hope you have your strumsticks out. Let's take a look at the upper right part of your screen. I have a graphic of When the Saints Go Marching In, and it's using my billiard ball numbers on the strings, which is something I've experimented with. I'm still undecided as to the usefulness of using those little billiard balls, but each note is a different color, which helps you notice that it's different, although I think I'm going to go back to the straight numbers, but that's what we have on this song for today. So if you'll notice that there's some chord symbols, we'll leave the chords out for just a moment, but the upper line of the group of three that you see in the very upper section is the first string on the strumstick, and the numbers are fret numbers. So 0 would mean no fingers, 2 would mean finger at the second fret, 3, third fret, and you guessed it, 4 would be the fourth fret, and so on. And if you strum all three strings, you get the melody beginning to come out, and you get a little harmony from the other two strings. Now, as we go through these lessons, let's say that they're basically aimed at a good intermediate audience, but I will always be talking about a few things that are relevant to beginners who are really, starting their strumstick playing at the beginning in this period of time, as well as things that are more intermediate and things that are more advanced also. So we're going to try to keep it a smorgasbord. But if you are a complete beginner, I strongly recommend that you, at some point, go to strumstick.com and look under instructions, find the beginner instructions, and work through the beginning parts of that. So you should be able to squeeze a string with one finger and to strum all 3 strings, and to do that comfortably and to move from fret to fret. And it wouldn't hurt if you went to the section we call mini chords, M-I-N-I, mini chords, which are 2 fingers that move up and down as a group, and start to work on that also. But with that said, wherever you are, you'll, in terms of your, level of playing with the Strumstick, I think you'll get lots of little things you can use out of this lesson. And as always, the lesson is recorded and will be available on YouTube, so that you can, if you go to strumstick.com and go to the video tab of our navigation bar across the top, and there will be a link right under that tab to the Strumstick Live Lessons page, and I will be posting embedded videos and also a link to YouTube for you to be able to see those videos as they become available as we do them, as well as that page has the link to the upcoming Thursday's lesson. Okay, so the simplest way to play this song would be just to strum all 3 strings and finger the chords. Now, let me bring back the chord graphic here. So the most used chords for the Strumstick are on this chart, and that's available on the website and in the instruction books also. And if you'll notice at the top the first chords on the left side of the group is a D, but at the bottom it says G. So if you're playing a G Strumstick, that fingering would be called G. That's the G chord. And if you're playing a D Strumstick, which there's a lot more D Strumsticks out and around there, it's a D chord, but it's the same fingering. So if you can play a D, you can play a G, and vice versa. And you can decide for yourself which finger you want to use. Like, so for that D chord, I could use my first finger at the 2nd fret and strum all 3, and that gives you a D major chord. And I'll be talking in terms of D. And if you're on a G Strumstick, just play along. It'll make an interesting sound, and nobody else will hear you but you. So we'll do the best we can here. I could also use the 2nd finger, and if needs be, I could use the 3rd finger. And what might dictate what finger you use might depend on what chord or fingering you had just come from, or what chord or fingering you were just about to go to. So there's a lot of times when I'll do the G with the 2nd finger, because the next thing I'm going to do might be, the D with the 2nd finger, because the next thing I'm going to do is going to be a G chord, which is going to use my first finger at the 1st fret on the 2nd string, and then my pinky over here on the 3rd fret. So if I'm here, that's an easier shift than if I'm here. So if you think economy of motion in the long run is going to almost always work out to your advantage. Now, when you're first starting, sometimes fingering a chord means taking a finger and grabbing it with the other hand and putting it where it needs to go. So when you're in the stage of still learning a chord or different chords, you don't have to worry as much about efficiency as just memorizing where you have to go and what you have to do. But then as you start using the chords in songs, you can think a little bit, when you're working the song up for yourself, you can think about, would it work better to be here or here? And it's, there's a wide range of latitude, so it's not a heavy decision, but something to think about as you're working your way through more and more complicated arrangements. So the D chord, and then the G chord, and then the A chord. And those are the 3, most used chords in key of in key of D. D, G, A. Now you could also do that by going D, G, A. If you just do the power chords, which is the open strings is a D power chord, 1 and 5 notes, and then putting your finger all the way across at the 3rd fret is the G, and all the way across at the 4th fret is the A. So that's another way to do those. And you can also simulate those chords by going, this is a D chord, this stands in for the G chord, and stands in for the A chord. Not a perfect fit, but you could get through the song with that. So if I were going to go, oh, when the saints go marching in, Oh, when the saints go marching in. So that chord that I fingered there is the substitute A. One finger chord, you would be able to sing the song with it. So with those chords mentioned, let's go back to the song. And to start with, we're just going to play the chords. Now, if you'll notice that I have the chords written, so the top chord is for key of D. The little grayer chord underneath it, the lighter one, is for key of G, if that is useful to you. So if we were going to play this in, let's say the basic rhythm for this would just be so it's kind of, oh, when the saints, let's get the key. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. So boom da da boo da bum bum. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to build a bunch of different layers and backgrounds. We're going to turn you into a second line band marching through the streets of New Orleans. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of tighten this up with a good steady beat for the rhythm without a lot of upstrums in it. So what I'm doing there is bottom string, all of them. Bottom string, all of them. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly the bottom string. It's sort of the bottom string. And if you, as we talked about last week, if you just kind of swing your hand out at a little bit of an angle, you're guaranteed to miss some of the other strings. Now, this would normally be bad strumming technique. You want to hit all three strings when you're strumming parallel to the face most of the time. But in this case, a little flick out. Now, don't do it too much or you'll wind up scraping the finish away on the side, but just a little, kind of a little clipped motion, a little bit out to catch that bass string. So then you have bass, all, bass, all, bass, all, bass, all. And you notice that sounds a lot more three-dimensional than all. A couple people are asking, I'm tuned D, A, D. That's D, A, D. High Nova Scotia. It's coming on spring up there, really. I promise, it's coming. So, bass string, all strings, we're tuned D, A, D. Compared to now, you notice that when I do all the down strums all the same, it has a little more drive to it than when I do that, bass strum, bass strum. And that's a thing called that I like to call one sound rhythms versus two sound rhythms. If you have a given beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're doing it with two different sounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a different flavor than if it's all the same sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a little more insistence to it, and it's I call that apparent tempo as compared to the actual tempo. So, or effective tempo is another thing you could call it. So that's going to be useful to us because as we go through the song, we could start with the bass strum, bass strum, bass strum, and work that for a while, and then at some point switch to the all the strings down, 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 if we want the thing to kind of move ahead just a little bit. So let's do bass strum, bass strum, bass strum. I'll give you a little bit slower count, and let's try playing through just the chords to this together, and I'll say the name of the chords as we get to them. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints go marching in on the D. Oh, when the saints go marching to the A. I want to D in that G. Oh, when the D, D, A, D. Let's even try singing it. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Okay, and you can even get kind of a little circular motion there. If I was going, I was doing my bass a little more over towards the sound hole and my strum a little more up the neck, and it looks a little bit like a locomotive wheel being driven. And that accentuates the difference in tone between the crispness back towards the bridge and the mellowness as you move a little up the neck compared to So there's another example of a kind of like a little microscopic shift in tone adds dimension to what you're strumming and the feel of the rhythm. And one of the things we try to strive for as we work out a song arrangement is to get a three-dimensional feeling, almost as though you were more than one instrument. Because if you have just one instrument with one sound playing the same exact tone in the same exact way, just the notes are changing, that's going to get monotonous more quickly than if you've got some different tones happening, even though you're playing the same notes, and you've got some feeling of movement through the song that keeps you interested and keeps your listeners interested. You're welcome, Sylvia. I'm glad you got the tuning sorted out there. Okay, so we've got bass drum, bass drum, bass drum. Now let's see, where would be a place where we might put in that straight down, 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 down without the bass drum, bass drum. Maybe when we get to I want to be in that number. That's not exactly a chorus, but that's kind of like the completion of the thought that this whole first part of the song is that when the saints go marching in, I want to be there. So we could try the down, down, down when we get to that. And again, keep in mind that we're working on a fairly simple song. We're doing some fairly simple techniques. But if you start thinking about the more complex things you might be able to play as a more advanced player, if you start thinking about them from this perspective of how can I create movement, what can I do to make a little subtle variation to build interest verse by verse by verse as I go through a song, that's what we're working to illustrate here, starting from some simple things. So let's try, we're going to do the bass drum, and then we'll be I want, down, down, down. And I'm going to pick the tempo up just a little bit now so we get a little closer to what, it's a lively song. We want to get closer to what it will really feel like. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be... See, I forgot already. It comes up so quick. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. And now, having done that, I think that I would rather go to that, instead of going to that down, 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 I want to be in the number, because there's still a long phrase and it kind of holds at number. I want to be in that number. I want to go at number is where I want to go, to the down, down, down. Oh, when the saints go marching in. So let's take that one more time, and we're going to bring that up to full speed this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And I will do my best to remember to go to the straight down strums when we get to number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that And that's great. Now that sounds better. Now we could even go back to the bass strum, after that little interluded number. Be in that number, oh, when the saints go marching in. So you can see there's a lot of little subtle impacts you can make on the way the song feels, because I guarantee that, let's just take at the I want to be in the number to when the saints go marching in, 3 different ways. So with all strum, bass strum, I want to be in that number, oh, when the saints go marching in. And now let's do the straight down strums just for the number interlude. I want to be in that number, oh, when the saints go marching in. And now let's hold that down, 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 all the way past number. I want to be in that number, oh, when the saints go marching in. And if you're doing that along with me, you may be a little less able to hear it, but if you listen to the tape, or if you do it yourself and are watching for it after you got it down a little, all 3 of those have a slightly different feel. So the kinds of impact on feel that we make by changing rhythm, by changing tone within rhythm, is one of the ways that we express emotion, as well as creating a sort of a moving canvas instead of everything kind of flat and tonally all the same. All right, so that's a good start for this song. Now, when you think of Dixieland jazz from New Orleans, one of the first things you think of is there's not only the melody, but there's also counter melodies. So we're going to start working in the direction of getting some of those counter melodies in. I think the first thing we could do is let's play through the actual melody. And if you're a beginner, this is not going to happen immediately. You might take a few minutes to get used to where the notes on all that stuff. So hang in there. It will definitely get smoother. But we're going to just play 0, 2, 3, 4, 0, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So I'll call out the numbers, and you can kind of look at the screen. You can probably hunch up a little closer to your screen than I can here. 0, 2, 3, 4. 0, 2, 3, 4. 0, 2, 3, 4, 2, 0, 2, 1, dun, 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 1, 2, 1, 0, 2, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 0, 1, 0. And at that slow tempo, I was kind of doing that in rhythm, so you can, play those notes according to the meter of the song. We're not using any rhythm notation on this tablature to show you the notes. So at speed, so that's the basic melody. Now, since we're strumming all 3 strings to get, to take advantage of the strumstick adding, the 2 harmony notes to whatever you're fingering on one string, let's take our bass strum and play through the melody. Now, if we do a bass when we're supposed to be fingering 2 on the first string, we're not always going to hear that 2 on the first string. But let's just finger the melody and see what happens if we do the bass drum. And you know what? That's gonna be too confusing. Let's do this. We'll play the little melody bit by strumming down, 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 and then we'll, in the little interludes between, where there's little pauses, rests between, one note ending and then the next group starting. Then we'll do the bass strum, bass strum, bass strum, holding on whatever note you were finished on there. So like 2, 3, 4, 0, 2, 3, where am I? 0, 2, 3, 4. So I see how I went to bass drum, bass drum, bass. 0, 2, 3, 4, 0, 2, 3, 4, 0, 2, 3, 4, 3, whoops, 4, 2, 0, 2, 2. Now I'm going to break that down slow. We're on the second line. Let's say, oh, when the saints go marching in. So there's little pauses and a longer pause in that phrase. Oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints go marching in. So we kind of staggered where those notes happen, but we had room to do the bass drum, bass drum, bass drum, bass drum in. And that creates a syncopation because the melody note is happening a beat later than where it would have been if you just did the melody straight. But it puts life into the thing. So if we go, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, I want to be in that. See, now I left that out. Be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. So it comes down to, if you're going down, 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 even if we leave the bass strum out for the moment, if that's your grid, you notice I'm doubling up on notes there, right? I'm not doing the pause. Oh, when the saints, 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 saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints, saints, saints go march, march in. I can't talk that fast. Oh, when the be in that number. When the saints, saints go marching in. Marching in. So I think you get the idea with that. You could double up on those notes, meaning if you just did the beat, you're going to hear those notes several times. And then, if you want to leave some of those out, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in. Now, what did I do there? A fake down strum. Now, I could have just sat there for the beat, and if you're comfortable doing that, that's fine. But if depending on where you are on the beginner to intermediate curve, you might find it's really helpful to make a little pulse with your hand at that missing beat, that non-strummed beat, so that you stay in step, marching along with the rest of the notes that are happening. And I call that a fake down strum. So there we're modifying the melody from the beat grid. We're modifying it by leaving random strums out. I'm going to take that last phrase slow from I want to be in the number. So you can see I left out a whole bunch of strums there, and I was not thinking I want to leave that one out for effect. I just thought, leave that one out. I guess I left two out. I meant to leave one, but I left two. So what? So that you're kind of, hacking your way through strumming and not strumming, but then you hear the melody come out in a slightly varied rhythm, which can add a lot of interest to it. And now if we bring the bass strum and those fake strums together with that, that's maybe the easiest one to pick up first is Saints fake, go march. I can't talk and strum and do it at the same time. So that was strum fake, Saints fake, go fake, march fake, aim fake, aim fake, fake, fake. Okay, now that's a little complex to do in the middle of a lesson, for you to practice it. But if you have the idea on that, see, there's a whole little chunk. You could take any little melody that you're playing and say, what happens if I kind of lay that on a grid of all, beats and offbeats or doubled beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start leaving some of them out. What does it do to the melody? Or doubling some of them up so that you're turning the rests where your guitar or your strumstick in this case might be strumming during those rests, and you're actually fingering the melody note during those rests. Now, that would certainly be boring if you did it all the way through, as we saw. But what that sets you up for is now you have just marked out all the places where you could do extra melody notes if you want to start emulating that, one line playing the melody and then a couple horns coming in, doodle-doodle-doot in between the melodies. So you've now marked off all the starting places for adding those other melodies. So let's do this. Let's go one more time through with just going down, 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 and fingering and holding every note until it comes time for the next one. So we're doubling up on everything if it has a rest. So when the saints, like that. And I'm going to slow it down a little bit, and you can play that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Oh, when the saints. Okay, good. I hope that worked. Let's see. Somebody went and got their strumstick out and tuned it up. That's great. That's just what we want. You and your strumstick, if you got to be, hanging out in your house, you might as well have some fun and make some music and lift your spirits and, be prepared for whatever comes next musically as things will open up over time. So we've now kind of marked out a grid, and I don't know if you noticed that it's interesting the first couple times you do that, but then it starts to get a little monotonous, that straight bum 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 bum. And one of my mottos with the strumstick is let boredom be your guide, and that applies to when you're learning something. If it's a new chord, maybe it's a hard fingering or something, work on it, and when you start to get a little bored working on it, that suggests that you may be ready for the next challenge. Now, you're still going to need to work on it, but when you're fully concentrating on something that's hard, you don't get bored. You may get frustrated, you might get challenged, but when you have challenge, you want to focus on what the challenge is. And then when you start to get a little bored, that's the sign that it's becoming a little less challenging. Maybe there's room for something new to creep in here for variety. So in this case, we're not just talking about the technique, we're talking about what we're doing in the song. So if you play a passage of the song and you do it several times in a row, the same sort of thing, and it starts to get a little monotonous, a little bit boring, that's your clue that you need to do something a little different, because if you're getting bored, so's your audience. Maybe not exactly the same rate, but we're getting into the edge of the territory. So where that's when starting to leave out some of those downstrums becomes like not only attractive to you, but it actually starts to become possible, because now you're not so challenged by doing the down, down, down and thinking about, I got to go down, 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 down. Where am I here? You're starting to actually hear what's happening, and you're noticing, oh, I kind of get this. Now what happens if I do a fake in here? So that's kind of that progression from challenge to boredom, and it's a clue for your technical development, but it's also a clue for your aesthetic development as you arrange whatever song you're playing. Let's see where we are time-wise here. Okay, we're about halfway. So now let's think about counter melodies, additional melodies, melodies in the holes between the existing melody. So obviously, oh, when the saints bump, 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 there's a hole. Go marching in, bump, 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 another hole. Oh, when the saints go marching. You get the idea. So let's take that first hole. Bump, 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 bump. If we just took the beats at the rhythm we're strumming, oh, when the saints 2, 3, 4, 1, we have 2, 3, 4, 1, that we could play that same note over and over. 2, 3, 4, 1. 4 notes, 4 note little slots we have available. We could play any 4 notes we wanted in that space. So the simplest thing to do, of course, is to just play the same note over and over. Oh, when the saints, 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 saints. The next simplest thing would be to do 2 different notes. Saints, 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 saints. Oh, when the saints go marching in. So we just made a little melody with 2 notes. It's not, it's not get you moved up to first horn in one of those bands, but it's a start. And you're now starting to think about, oh, I'm filling in a hole with a little micro bit of melody. Whoops. Let's try that together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints do. Oh, when the saints do, 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 do. Now, if we could do 2, why not 3? So that means we're going to have to double something up. Saints, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And we're going back to the melody note as the 5th note there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Suppose we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a little bit of I went down to old Joe's house, da, 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 old Joe Clark. And here we're using the extra fret on the strumstick. This is the flatted 7th, the normal major scale has a whole tone between the 6 and the 7, whole tone, but the flatted 7th has a bluesy sound. What could be more appropriate for when the saints go marching in? Oh, when the saints go marching in. Let's try that together. I'll slow the tempo down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints go marching in. And let's try that once more together. 2 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching. I took the same trick, pushed it down to where I was for the next part. Oh, oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching. Now, is that the greatest Dixieland melody ever played? Probably not. It's just a little section of a major scale. But it's 2 things. First of all, if you're not doing it at all, it's a great leap forward. Secondly, those are markers for the rhythm that you're using to fill there. You could choose other notes that you might find, more sophisticated or more unusual or more impressive. Whatever your, goal is with that little phrase, this is like a placeholder. And that doesn't sound too bad. What if we went... So instead of... I went to the 4th fret. And now, see, now I'm using my 3rd finger because I'm already using 1st and 2nd. If I jump all the way up here with my 2nd finger, I'm going to have to jump all the way back here. But 3rd finger, it's less of a jump. Now, changing from finger to finger, there's another little technical hurdle to overcome, getting used to that. But this is a good place to learn it. And if you slow that melody down, that's a very beautiful little phrase. You could write a song with that. People have already done it, but you could write your own song starting with that phrase. By the way, any little 3-note phrase you can come up with, guaranteed it's been done 1,000 times before, even at different rhythms, because there's only so many notes and there's only so many sub-beats that you can break things into. So when you are creating things, you're always walking on ground that other people have walked. But if you have not walked on that ground before, it's original. And what you do with it in terms of all the rest that goes with it is original. So don't be discouraged by the fact that Mozart probably played every note combination that you could come up with to play at one point or another in his incredibly prolific, if unfortunately short career. But you don't know all that. You don't know all of Mozart. Maybe you do. Maybe that person right there on the list, I think, is a classical piano player and learned all of Mozart. But when you listen to music, whether it's acoustic music, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's hip hop, whether you like pop, whatever style of music you like, if you start tuning your ear to the melody phrases in the holes, when the band is playing and then there's a 4-beat pause and the lead guitar goes, or whatever it does, or the horns come in with a little blip, or the strings go in plucking pizzicato. Listen for those little notes in the holes. That's one of the way you sort of build almost a vocabulary of musical phrases that you can then, try them out on the Strumstick, or at least get the idea that a phrase could happen in that place. So we've got, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching. Completely different feel than, what if I went up to the 6th fret? What if I went down to this note, 1st string on the 2nd fret? What if I went to this 2nd fret note? What if I dropped it over to the bass string? Saints go marching. Saints go marching. Remember, anything you finger on the 1st string, you can do on the bottom string because they're an octave apart, and octaves substitute for each other. You could play the whole melody on the bass string. So whatever you work out on the 1st string, bonus, 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 you got it automatically on the bottom string. And that is actually a great way to, like if you go to the 2nd verse of the song and you want to have it feel completely different. Oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the sun begins to shine, oh, when the sun begins to refuse to shine. So as you start moving these little melody bits around, see what the progress, the line of progress that we just did was we had beat, 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 beat in a little hole, and we thought, oh, I'll play 2 notes. Beat, note, 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 and then back to the starting note. Note, 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 note. And we thought, what about 3 notes? Note, 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 note. And then later on in the line, we went in, 2, 2, or. So you start to realize you could put any couple of notes in there, and every one of them has a different feeling. So I hope this kind of opens up a box of crayons for you, and you spend some time figuring out little melody bits in different parts of your song. Let's play. I'm going to play through, and I'm just going to play some little phrases just as a sort of an example. You can just do the steady beat. You can do little melody phrases of your own, or you can just watch. Any way you do that right now is okay. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching. Now there I added a quick up strum in a few spots. Instead of I want to be go marching in. Instead of going, I went. So I had an up strum in between the down strums. So instead of going bum 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 bum, I went bum ba ba bum 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 ba ba bum bum bum. So I just added a rhythmic element that changed that 4-beat pattern to. So the next step, and we're not going to push this too far in this lesson, but the next step would be, if you've got 4 beats to fool around on, add some upbeats in there. Oh, when the saints. So oh, when the saints. Oh, when the saints. 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints. Da da dun dun dun. Dum ba da dum bum bum. Bum ba da bum bum bum. Oh, when the saints go marching in. And oh, when the saints. Oh, when the saints. Oh, when the saints. Da ba da bum bum. Not bum ba da bum bum bum. Bum bum ba da bum bum. I shifted that extra beat a little later. Saints go marching in. Saints go marching in. Saints go marching in. Did it in. Saints go marching in. Saints go marching in. See, so every time you open up another slot, now you could bring another note in or just repeat the same note. So you've got a whole wealth of little easy to construct places to put counter melodies in without having to actually orchestrate those melodies in a profound way to say, is this echoing part of this other song that I really want to bring as an echo in, because that's one of the things that people do when they make arrangements. You're just looking for, it's kind of like hacking. You're hacking your way through with an axe through a dense underground, underbrush. You're finding a couple notes to get your bearings, and then you're building on that and make something a little more complex. And then in the course of that, you might find a little phrase that particularly speaks to you. Okay, so we've got, I'm going to play that one more time, and then we're going to add some harmony bits in there too. So there's the kind of an example. Now, when I'm fingering this note, I can also add 1 fret higher on the middle string. This is one of our mini chord forms. I'm noticing that Randy has a question. Will we be offering these weekly? Yes, I'm going to be doing these every Thursday night, the live Strumstick lesson will be Thursday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. I also do a workshop called Teach Your Guitar to Sing at 7 o'clock Wednesday night, Eastern Daylight Time. And both of those are findable on my website. And there's some overlap between the two conceptually. Even if it's on guitar, there are things that we talk about, just as we're talking about structural things here in terms of arranging, as well as how to actually do them on Strumstick. There are structural things we talk about in the Teach Your Guitar to Sing workshop that are applicable to the Strumstick, just with a different, physical thing you do to employ them. So feel free to join that stream if you like. We're going to do this mini chord. Now, the thing with the mini chords is that if you move them down a whole fret, so each finger moves by a total of 1 fret, so 2 goes to 1 and 3 goes to 2. You get an interesting harmony each place you do that. Now, you can think of these forms as pretty much interchangeable with the melody note. So if I am doing the melody, I could go, ooh, there's that second horn playing harmony with me. Let's grab that little pair, and I'm going to give you a real slow tempo for this because we're dragging 2 fingers around, and as soon as you start to do 2 things where you had been doing 1, it becomes 3 times as hard. That's always a good rule. If you do 1 thing, it's 1.5 times as hard the first times you do it. But when you do 2 things new, then it's 3 times as hard, and if you do 3 things new, then it's about 6 times as hard. So, pace yourself. So we'll slow this down so there's a little time to kind of keep your bearings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Starts with open. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I'm just discovering I sing a different melody than I wrote there. You probably noticed that a long time ago. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Let's try that a hair faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. And then I started to the bass drum. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I'm thinking about what I'm doing there and next, and that's always when you get lost, is when you're thinking about what you're doing next. So now we're starting to build together the early thing that we did with the bass drum, and then I shifted to down, 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 down towards the end, and I followed the melody with this. Now, those of you who are fast might be thinking, hey, wait a minute. Oh, when the saints, hit the mini chords, but then could I just do that in between? Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints. Or could I do mini chords for that little melody phrase? Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. I want to be in that number. Oh, when the saints you go. You've got a whole package of stuff that you can work on this week. We've got about 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any big questions here? Let's see. Oh, here's a question down here. I'm forgetting. When you move from fret to fret to the next, is it a whole step or half step? Very good question. And this goes into the realm of music theory, which is a mystery that was created in the Middle Ages. And I remember being told that the streets of central Boston, if you're familiar with Boston, there's a lot of streets that don't meet at right angles. And somebody told me, I don't know if this is true, but I like to believe it, is that those streets evolved from, some of them came from the paths that cows would take to get from one pasture to the other. So that the cows had already worn paths in the straightest line to get to where I wanted to go. So when they made, a little bit more developed dirt roads, they followed those. And then when they made paved roads, they followed those. So the way the streets of central Boston and many European cities evolved had a lot to do with where people and animals walked rather than the rectilinear grid that, later cities architecturally developed. Music is like that too. That music started with people banging on sticks and rocks and blowing on, hollow pieces of bone and making musical sounds long before it was ever figured out a way to write those things down, and long before anybody made up rules for how they should go together and all that sort of stuff. So the major scale that is kind of, let's say, one of the main building blocks of, Western, in this case, Western civilization music, is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And it's made of not equal intervals, as it turns out. That if you take the interval from D to G an octave higher. Now, an octave is that magic thing where it seems to repeat itself, but it's higher. Now, that doesn't make any sense, except when you experience it, you say, oh, that's the same melody. It's the same relationship. So the magic of octaves is it's the same, but it's different. And if you can hang on to that, you are actually prepared for a whole lot of things in life. Now, major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If we took that octave and we broke it into 12 equal parts, why 12? Never mind, but 12 equal parts. Those equal parts are called halftones. Halftones are where the frets are closer together. Now, when we play the major scale, we're not playing 12 notes, which I can't play 12 notes in an octave on the strumstick because it doesn't have a fret here and a fret here and a fret here and a fret here. But I can play 2 half steps from the open string to the first fret, 2 half steps to the next fret, 1 half step, 2 halves, 2 halves, 2 halves because we're skipping this extra fret here, and then a half step to the top. Now, if we say the 2 halves, we call that, logically, a whole, W-H-O-L-E. Open note, a whole step up, a whole step up, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, a half step. That pattern is what constructs a major scale. And it could start from whatever note you chose to start it if you followed those intervals from that note. 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, or whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you have a major scale. So where the frets are a big jump apart, you're moving a whole tone. Where the frets are a small jump apart, you're moving a half tone. Now, if you're mathematically inclined, you'll think, oh, if I go from the open string to the second fret, 2 plus 2 equals 4. I'm going 4 half tones or 2 whole tones. But then I'm only going up a half tone. So When the Saints is a pattern that goes 4 half tones and then 1 half tone and then a whole tone, and then it repeats, and then it repeats. Now here I'm going from here 2 half tones plus a 1 half tone, so that's 3 to get to here. So I'm going down 3 half tones. Now I'm going down 4, back up 4, and then down 2. So that's like a music theory analysis of how that melody's constructed. Now you don't have to do that on your little set of hollow bones that you got from the caribou that you ate for dinner last night, and you've scraped all the marrow out. Now you blow on them, and it's like, oh, look, I just invented music. And everyone in the cave is looking at you like you're weird. But that's the way that music grew. It grew from experience into description. And now once the description got sophisticated enough, then people could look in the holes in the description and say, nobody's ever put this note with this note. I wonder how bad that would sound. Let's try it. So that's a little, peek under the skirt of, music theory, a little peek behind the curtain. And we will bring some other music theory bits in this, because music theory is really useful, not as rules, but as guidelines and as a way of starting to hold things in relationship to other things. I see a question. Holly is playing ukulele, where it's all half steps, and with a chromatic instrument that's all half steps, you have to create a whole step by moving 2 frets. Just as in the strumstick, if you want to create 4 half steps, you have to move 2 large steps. So we have a diatonic instrument. That's the name for this major scale fretting on the strumstick. And we have chromatic instruments like guitars and pianos using the white and the black keys, and ukulele and banjo and things like that. Okay, now there's another question. What kind of strap do I use on the strumstick? I'm using one of our color up straps that are $15 on our website, but the strumstick comes with a string strap with a sliding knot that works just as well. The colorful strap is more colorful, and it's maybe a hair more comfortable because it has these little stretchy O-rings at the 2 ends, so there's a little give, and it's a little wider. So if you're wearing a sleeveless shirt or something like that, and it's against the strings against your neck, and you're playing for 3 hours, you might start to notice it. This is a little more comfortable, but it's not a mechanical advantage. It's more an aesthetic advantage. Okay, so we're at 9 o'clock. I think what we'll do is I'm going to play us out. I'm going to go through "Oh, When the Saints," and I'm just going to let my imagination run wild and throw some stuff in, and I might even get into trouble. Remember, getting into trouble is the core of learning, as long as you don't damage yourself or others when you get into trouble. Because when you find mistakes, you realize, I've gone a little too far, or I think I won't do that again. But learning is hinged on making mistakes. If you are trying to learn creatively, if you're trying to broaden your horizons and to come up with things on your own, feel free to make mistakes. In fact, I could say your assignment for this week is to make 100 mistakes in your strumstick playing, and a test will be given, and I'll want to see certification in video of every single one of those mistakes before you can go on to the next lesson. Of course, I'm kidding. But make a lot of mistakes and be creative. And the other motto is, you never know where far enough is until you've gone too far. Now, like I said, if that damages you or damages anybody else, that's not a good motto. But when you're talking about paint on a canvas or words on a page or musical notes drifting out of the strumstick in your living room, make all the noise you want and find out what the noises are that you like. Okay. And you're all very, very welcome for listening to me, babble on about things that I've, figured out as I played the strumstick over the years. And I designed the strumstick so that people could play music more easily. So there was more access because I love it, and I'm happier when I have more people to play with. So it's very selfish. I just want more and more people to be able to play with me when I encounter them. So the better you play, the better I play. It's like if you play volleyball and you just get to the stage where you learn how to bump and pass, and you maybe don't want to play with those people that are hitting it over on the first hit. But then you go with people that really know how to do it, and they don't want to play with you because all you do is know how to bump awkwardly. So you always learn by getting together with people who are a little better than you are. So if you have a chance to jam with other people on guitar or any other instruments, online, and eventually when we open up again, take those opportunities. Don't be shy. Make sure it's okay with them if they know how you play and they're okay with you being a beginner or intermediate. You don't want to mess up their gig by jumping up out of the audience saying, "Oh, let me play strumstick with you." But, play with other people, play with people who are behind you on the curve and give them a leg up, and play with people who are ahead of you on the curve and let them give you a leg up. So here we go. I'm going to play us out. Okay. more time. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. When we'll be in that number. Oh, when the saints go marching in. So there's a little smorgasbord, and play it back and see what you can pull out of that. And I will see as many of you as can make it next Thursday. So have a great week, and be well and be safe.